I still routinely go back and I high-five that 14-year-old kid sitting in his bedroom in Indiana with movie posters and books and everything and dreaming of all that. And do I have success like the big-time success? No. Am I ever going to get it? Probably not. That doesn't matter. I'm successful in a way that I never thought that I could be and in ways that I never imagined that I could be.
All right. This is the Story Series podcast where we tell the stories behind the people. Eric Miller, welcome.
Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you.
So you are an author, a screenwriter, a movie maker, and a Bram Stoker Award-nominated anthology editor. You also have this awesome new book out called What Happened to Uncle Ed, and I can't wait to dive into all that with you. So once again, I'm thrilled that you're here.
Great. Me too. It's going to be fun.
So why don't we just go back and connect the dots a little bit? I like to just learn origin stories. And so if you could, where did you grow up?
No radioactive spider.
Yeah. When did you get bit?
Yeah. When did you get bit? No, I grew up all over, but mainly in Indiana in a series of small towns. My dad was First Air Force, so there was a little bit of that. He was getting out when I was born in Portland, Oregon, of all places. Then we went back to the family home of Indiana. And for a long time, he was a college professor without tenure. So every semester, sometimes we would move to another little small college town and various places. So I had a interesting upbringing. We say connecting the dots. I did that one time. I put out a map and went, how many places did I live? And it's kind of like this weird scribble of things. So that's the formative thing.
Really?
And
throughout that time, were you always creatively inclined? Did you have that bug early on? What were you into? What were you kind of taking in?
I was taking in TV, movies. I was kind of a latchkey kid. The parents, both mom and dad, were working, and so we went after school. My brother and I spent a lot of time home alone. So there was always a lot of TV on, but there was always books in the house. Dad had a ton of books, and whenever he would go on a tour or something, or a symposium or whatever he was doing, he'd bring back books for me. So early on, I was into horror and science fiction, and I just gravitated towards that. I wanted to be huge into comic books. I started collecting comic books and loved them. And I still remember the kind of these lost things that kids don't really get to do these days, but going to whatever drugstore in the small town and there's the literal spinning rack of all the titles, and you want to flip through and buy them all and read them, but you've only got $1 or whatever you managed to save up. So became a huge comic fan, and again, but reading books.
Yeah.
Always at the library, always scrounging. I still remember so many. Some of them are still open, but used bookstores. Still just kind of a holy place almost. And
for sure.
Yeah, the smell of an old bookstore.
The smell, the discovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was it, and I was just absorbing all of that. And I always like to give credit to Sammy Terry, who was back in the day. There's only Svengoolie these days, as many people know on whatever channels. But back in the day, almost every small town or major town in America broadcast that had a TV station had a generally Saturday night monster host. And most of them were funny and goofy, and I love Svengoolie. He does a thing. But Indianapolis, which was where I believe it was Channel 4, where we got most of our old movies and stuff, had Sammy Terry. And I believe his son is doing it now. But he was, in a couple books that I read, Sammy Terry was the serious host. Yes, he was a ghoul, vampire, whatever he was, and he had George the Rubber Spider, and he played the same terrible movies that other people played, but he treated every one of them with respect, not from a filmmaking standpoint, but he would try to make it scary and realistic. And when you're a little kid seeing that, and that's where my love of great films from great old Vincent Price movies and Hammer movies and Christopher Lee and all those just wonderful movies that influenced me so much. But seeing someone like Sammy Terry, and yet when you're a kid, you don't know that it's a dumb TV channel in the middle of the night. It's the whole world to you. You're connected to something bigger. And all credit, I can't remember which book I did, which is embarrassing, but I dedicated one of them to Sammy Terry and I have, my mom went to a state fair 10, 15 years ago and got a signed Sammy Terry thing to me.
Cool.
And that's up in my living room. And it's amazing how someone like that had such an influence.
Yeah, I remember growing up watching similar style shows, like it was like the Monster Drive-In or something, where you'd have a host and there's this kind of creepy vibe to it, and kind of wink a little bit, but introducing some spooky movie of the week, usually
Right,
Saturday
right.
night, something like that.
Yeah, and there's not many left. Like I said, as
No.
far as I know, Svengoolie, and you know when cable exploded, of course, we get
Sure.
Up All Night,
Right.
and Joe Bob Briggs is still
Maybe that's what it was that I'm thinking
and,
of.
And you know, again, another one. Just all credit to Joe Bob
Yeah.
because he has done more for independent film and creativity, and it's entertaining and it's fun. And
Yeah.
it's just it just seems like he's a guy you could hang out with in the trailer park, and
Right.
still doing it after all these years. And
Yeah.
people like that I hope they understand the generations of people they've influenced, and I don't think they get enough credit.
No, especially that genre mashup of like, I'm thinking of that trailer park kind of vibe, that hillbilly horror kind of subgenre that exists back then. I'm thinking ahead of like Rob Zombie or White Zombie, the artist, but was like the early incarnation of that kind of genre bending a little bit.
Yeah.
Shows like that.
Well, and even the movies that we're watching too. I mean, things like again, when you're a kid, you think that things are
Yeah.
wide. And I one movie that scared the crap out of me as a kid, and I thought that like, oh, everyone in the world's seen this, and it turned out it was a regional release. But The Legend of Bogey Creek, which has been remade. I don't know if you've even heard of it, but it was a really super low budget independent, and it was whatever, a swamp monster or whatever. And some guys grab a Super 8 camera and made it, but here it is on TV, and it's like, it's us. I live in a small town, and it's small town people. And
Right.
I think that's why a lot of later films resonate. Like Tremors is one of my favorite films,
sure.
and should be, because like when you meet those guys, it's like, they're people in the small town I lived with. I know those guys, and they're smarter and more resourceful than people give them credit. And then you get to the next extension. You come into more, a little more modern times. Another favorite film, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which if you're familiar with, everyone should watch this, even if you're not into horror movies, because the old trope of city people go to the country, meet the weird, toothless, inbred rednecks, and they murder them, whatever, done in countless movies, and really well done in some and poorly in others. The trick in Tucker and Dale is, spoiler alert, Tucker and Dale are the rednecks. They're two friends. They bought a cabin. They're trying to renovate it. And yes, the college kids come up from town to go for the weekend, but they're typical drunk idiots wanting to party. And this series of circumstances happen while Tucker and Dale are trying to be nice and help them out. Everything that could go wrong goes wrong. And the people keep seeing, as they're trying to help somebody get through a terrible incident, they look on and see Tucker or Dale. It looks like they're killing them. So the kids freak out, and it escalates, and it just keeps going. And it's just like, no, this is great. This is so Midwestern, small town, everything. Tucker and Dale. I know people like that. And that's why it also resonates. Not just that the filmmaking is terrific and that they flip the script upside down on the traditional tropes, but it's about people.
It's about people.
It's about people that feel real. And to stay on that for a second, I know not everybody, there might be 2 or 3 people in the world that don't like Stephen King. But the thing that I've always marveled about King and some other writers, but him in particular, is he manages to create 20, 30, 40 new smallish town people in every book, and they all seem real. And he's the master, of course, of some of his works don't even have horror in them, but you take the horror out, it's still a story about people having real people conflicts and things. And when you introduce the supernatural or the monster or whatever, it becomes even better. But that's something, again, in this same whole world of, I think so many of us grew up in small towns, and those kind of stories really resonate, especially when the people seem real. And that's a hard thing to do, to create real characters on the page.
Yeah. I was just talking to a screenwriter, and they were talking about the importance of character first. And this was in TV writing and in animation show pitching and developing. And they were talking about how a lot of writers get caught up in world building first and being seduced by set dressing. And in reality, it's the characters that you are there for, that you invest in, that you ultimately stay for. And just in our brief conversation so far, that seems like it's a real touching point for you. It's just character. You've talked about these horror movies that resonated with you as a kid, and you're talking about small town settings. You're not talking about what scared you about them, but you're talking about connecting with the places and the people first. And that's just interesting that I'm just hearing
Well,
from you.
And I think that's two-pronged. That first off, movies, books, whatever, we want to project ourselves as the consumer, the reader, the watcher, whatever. You want to project yourself into the main character. So it has to be relatable enough to you that you can feel like that could happen to you. So that's one really important thing. And it's also on the flip side, when you're the writer or the director or whatever, the actor, you're putting little bits of you into that character too. So it makes it feel real. And when those characters really come off the page or off the screen and people relate to them, when the bad stuff happens, you give a damn, you care, you're on the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
As opposed to, some people like, I just didn't care if that guy lived or died. There's a famous movie by a famous director that I won't name, and a lot of people like it, good for them, and I don't question the filmmaking, it's great, but every single person in the movie is reprehensible. And I'm like halfway through the movie, I'm like, I don't really give a damn if anyone dies, and I hope half of them die horribly. And so there was just no connection to that. And again, if they set out to make a real nihilistic movie, well, that's great. I don't mind that.
Right.
But it seemed to be more of a traditional film, and
That's really interesting.
kind of failed for me. And again, other people love the movie, so good for them. But
So I loved hearing your observation on Stephen King's novels, where even if they're quote unquote horror novels, if you could take the horror out of it and it's still a story about characters going through something, do you care about it? Do you care about these characters? That's kind of key. And then you can hang whatever genre you want on top of it, right? But if it's like, if you strip away that stuff that you're talking about, there should be just a story of heart and character.
yes, and I think I've always thought that, especially about Stephen King. I mean, he's the appropriately titled Stephen King. He's the king of it. But so many other writers manage to do that, and filmmakers manage to do that. It comes up in, I think, reviews and things that it's like you really feel like you could relate, and that to me is really important. And trying to remember, I hope I don't get this wrong. I want to credit the right person for this, but as I remember it, I hope I'm right. Lee Child, who's a terrific writer,
Yeah.
I think it's him that said that he was giving a speech or whatever it was in his. Sorry, I'm rambling here. You might have to edit this out, but he says that he asks the question of the audience. He's emphasizing how important characters are, not just to get a TV deal, but not to get a book deal, but that exactly what we're talking about, that people relate to that. And the example that I remember is said is like, how many people here have ever heard of the Lone Ranger? And every hand in the audience goes up mostly. And the next question is, how many of you remember a single Lone Ranger story? Crickets. Now, that's not to take away from the story, because story is super important and plot. But when you're building this structure of a story and weaving all these elements in, and the set dressing, like you said, and the writing style and all of these things, the filming style and what medium you're in, if the character's not there, it sucks.
Curious, you talk about, an author's time and place and that perfect matchup for a novel. And I'm curious if you could talk about what that was for this novel, What Happened to Uncle Ed. For those who don't know, can you give just a brief synopsis on what it is and just what the impetus for writing the book?
Yeah, and it's a little hard to pitch, which is tough, but it's basically the story of a guy in his 40s that's kind of the weird guy at work. He's an accountant. You slowly unpeel his backstory. He lives in a weird mansion. The giant weird looks like a haunted house on the side of town, and his best friend is his boss, kind of a father figure. And there's all the rumors, like, what does this guy do? He's kind of weird. He sticks to himself. He comes in beat up and bruised and all these things. What it turns out is, as the story slowly unpeels, and I'm always trying to not give spoilers away, but he's inherited the house from the titular character, Uncle Ed. Uncle Ed has disappeared years ago, left the house to Max. Max is the main character, and he finds a deep, dark, black magic secret in the basement, that Uncle Ed was a sorcerer. He created this strange arena underneath the house where every full moon, supernatural battles take place, for the winners of each side takes the other side's soul. And Max, again, I'm giving away a lot of the book here, but you find out that he's got to go down there. His uncle has trapped a lot of people in the basement, and he feels this very strong family duty that he needs to go save the people. And what I've left out here a bit is he had a basketball career. He was a high school basketball star, which comes from Indiana, where I grew up. There's
Yes.
a very Midwestern flavor to this. And through all of the circumstances that you uncover in the book, he couldn't go to college. Events happened to with his mom and dad. Life crashes in these terrible ways. And he had to quit. He could have gone and been a star, might have made it in the NBA. Like so many people that I've known growing up, real people that they have this preternatural talent, but they can't go to the next level. So he's been burning for the last 20, 25 years with this competitive desire. And suddenly this game falls in his lap.
Yes.
And it's almost like we're talking about with writers and actors and things. In this character, it's almost like the perfect storm. And one of the other characters points it out to him in a key moment, that he's going down every month and putting his life on the line. And he's like, literally, I'm going to die to win the game. And they say that, you're just doing it because you like to win. He's like, no, I'm trying to save people. Well, yeah, you are, but you want to win.
Yeah.
And I've always been fascinated by that competitive drive in sports people. I'm a big race fan, racers, people that, racers more than anybody else, that put their life on the line every week. It's a lot safer these days, but back in the day,
sure,
race cars were dangerous.
Yeah.
And, and even in any kind of sport, but the people that, that next level, that, what separates a Michael Jordan from the next guy on the bench? Yes, he's, physically talented, but in there is, I go into this in the novel, is this, I call it the assassin. I've heard other people talk about that, especially with basketball players, referring to the assassin mentality, that you'll go on the court, the timer's counting down, the finals are on the line. Out of those guys on that team, and they're all professionals, they're amazing, or even in college, all these amazing people, there might be one or two of them that will take that shot at the buzzer. They know they're going to make it. That's something else I go into, and the character Max says that is like, I have to go in thinking I'm going to win, because if I don't, everything falls apart. But how many people in the world, where your entire career, the whole world's watching, millions of people, fans on both sides, you take that shot when the buzzer's going down. There's 11 people on a basketball team. How many people are going to take that shot?
Yeah.
And a lot of them hesitate.
Yeah.
Most of them will, or they don't have just the pure, again, that assassin mentality. I'm taking the shot.
Right.
I'm doing it. I don't care if I win or lose. And as my tagline in the book that I love is, I'm going to go down shooting. And it has various meanings in this,
course.
but it means ultimately it's talking about, taking that last shot in a game.
So what was the impetus for writing the book? Did it start as a character? Was there an image? Why did you, and this is your first full-length novel, correct?
Correct.
You're a screenwriter. You've edited anthologies, but in terms of your first novel, why this one? What about it was like, yes, this has to exist as a full-length book?
Yeah, well, whatever happened to Uncle Ed bubbled for far too long. There's a saying with writers that write something, short story, book, whatever, put it in the drawer, and then come back to it later when you're a little bit fresher and not so tied to things. It took on various forms over the years, and I don't really want to say how long it took to write.
It takes what it takes.
You know what? My tagline is better late than never.
Yes.
And that should be to any creative out there. You're growing up, your grandma Moses didn't paint till she was 65, and whatever. It's true.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter how young you are. Do it. And if it takes longer than you thought, if life gets in the way, if you procrastinate like so many writers do, just do it. Finish it at some point, or if you don't finish it, that's okay too. But the long story short is, I wrote a short story when I still lived in Indiana, before I was going to various colleges and dropping out and coming back to work to help the family. And also I was always writing in between things. And I was starting to have the glimmer of wanting to come to Hollywood. I'd always loved movies, like I said, and I changed my major in college, but I started thinking that I wanted to something really, really visual. And unfortunately, the entire story is lost to the mists of time. I do still have the original short story, and at some point I'm going to put it out.
I was going to say, was that ever published? Or?
Yeah, it was never published.
Okay.
But I do remember, and I used to do this a lot, I would come up with, in a lot of my short stories, I would come up with the last line. Now, at one point, there's a different iteration of this. It's still in here. There's a line in the book that I remember having. Like literally, it popped into my head one day. I was driving to work or whatever I was doing, and the line, which is still there, and it used to end the story, is, who's going to feed the cat? And I kind of knew the character and I knew it was a dreadful situation. And I worked backwards from that. And I pulled in elements of places that I worked, people that I knew, horror movies that I've seen. There's so many. I need to do a pop-up video version of this, of all the little homages and references of other works of movies and books and writers who have influenced me. So I worked backwards from that, made this original short story, got whatever, went back to college, whatever one I was going to then. And one of my college roommates read it and went, wow, this is really, really good. You should expand this. So over whatever semester and whatever spare time I had, kind of made it into a novella. And I'll be honest, I had written a lot of short stories, wasn't obviously, I was, in my early 20s at that point. I still have copies of most of them. My style hasn't changed tremendously, but I wasn't as good as I am now, so to speak, with a lot of practice, like at anything. But I also didn't have the confidence for some reason. I thought my stuff was good, but my things are always kind of weird and different. And I ran into a lot of, what do I want to say? Losing track of words here. I ran into a lot of resistance to my writing because people just didn't get it. I was writing weird horror, and I would always put in humor. And
I was going to say, how do you define weird horror? And maybe it's the humor aspect of it. This is also very funny. There's elements of horror. There's comedy in it. Is that what you're referring to when you say weird?
Yeah, when I say weird, it's more of a genre mashup.
Yes.
And I like to say that I put in gallows humor in things because there's a lot of that. But I also, because I read voraciously and watch voraciously, and there's so many different genres that I like. I guess maybe I'm hyperactive and trying to cram too much into one story, but some of my favorite writers do the same thing. They put in humor. Like, I'm a giant Kurt Vonnegut fan. And, technically they called him a science fiction writer. He was not science fiction. He, touched on that in Sirens of Titan and things, but he was a literature writer, but wrote about deep, important things, verged into fantasy, verged into science fiction, but there was always this wry sense of humor in there. And the movies that I watched the same way, things, American Werewolf in London and Gremlins. I'm going to say Gremlins to my grave. And there's so many, like, I always liked, even if they're not a direct horror comedy, I like that put in the relief, the comic relief, which is, it's either a safety valve or it's, it's a device or it's a pure horror comedy, whichever it makes. But it's, again, back to gallows humor. So when I say weird, I don't want to say, with all respect to bizarro, if you know the genre. I don't read a lot of it, but there's bizarro fiction and bizarro horror. Those people are out there. Some of my friends do it, and I read it, and I'm like, I couldn't imagine this in a million years. And I'm like, wow, this is off the charts. And it takes a certain kind of people to read it, of course, because it's really bizarre. But you're right. When I say weird, I mean that I'm putting different genres in. So when I would send out stories and things, they would keep getting rejected. And people just, I'm going to read a horror story. Wait, this isn't a horror story. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, but it is, but it isn't. So I think that kind of dinged my confidence. And that's a tough thing with writing. You always think a lot about this. There's sayings that you hear, you're not a real writer until you've been rejected 1,000 times, things like that. And the corollary to that is they always tell you that doing the same thing over and over is the definition of crazy. And like, so wait, what is this? Are you saying... And so you do start questioning yourself. And this is to I know every writer has felt this, and people are embarrassed to say it. You start questioning, is this any good? Am I a good writer? Do I suck? Or actually, if you don't say that, you should be saying that. Because I do run into a lot of people that think, I'm the best writer that ever lived. Well, no, you're really not. You might be a good storyteller. You might be this. I got that a lot when I was doing development in Hollywood, that you get hundreds and hundreds of scripts in. And I used to kind of have a rough number that I've probably read a couple thousand over the years. Yeah. And maybe that you get to that 90% of them are just bad writing and a bad story.
Yes.
5% of them are great writing and an okay story. The other, another whatever percent are great story and okay writing. And that one or two at the top, like we're talking about with Elroy and others, great writing and great story. And those just pop. That's not to say that there's not a great story, because Hollywood is its own beast, that the script is a blueprint for something else. So
that's true.
You don't have to be the best writer in the world, and you don't have to follow grammar rules and all that. As long as you're telling a good story and you understand the structure, then it can still become a great piece because so many other people are interpreting it. But when you're in the novel space or the short story space, it's you.
Yes.
You're the writer, director, the star, you're the set director, set design, you're doing everything.
You are.
And you're following the rules, grammatical rules. So it's really kind of almost a singularly scary thing. And the doubt creeps in. They call it, so many terms that psychologists, I'm not, obviously not, but imposter syndrome,
Yes.
fear of success, fear of failure, writer's block, however you want to dress it up, whatever isn't, you start doubting yourself. And it really, when you get, you get bad grades or average grades in school, but you're not reading, people aren't reading you that get you.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that kind of dinged me. So, but I did, long story short, I eventually turned this into a novella, expanded the story as my writing styles got better. At one point in the late 90s or something, I turned it into a screenplay because I had written a bunch. I had some success. I had my first movie made in, I want to say 96, 97, which was a good experience. Learning more about Hollywood, I started getting hired to write scripts. I had finally cracked that, and turned out I was really a natural at the 3-act structure and creating characters and vibrant things. A few things made, took quite a while to do that, but I was being hired. A lot of people, when you see credits, you don't see a lot of credits on some people, or there's like a 20-year gap. You also don't realize a lot of those people are being paid to write something, or were always out there writing specs
Yes.
in between jobs.
Well, just to go back to tracking the life of this novel.
Yes.
And so in the 90s, you became a working screenwriter. You had some success. You turned your then novella into a screenplay for this book. What happens then? Are you still you're finding some success? But what about this voice, your own personal voice that you're tapping into? Are people resonating with that material or not yet?
Yeah. Well, and at the time I was writing, I finally got an agent, which is the hardest thing to do in the world. And I had a couple agents over the time. And one of the problems was, you learn these things as you're going on, is the agents, everybody wanted me to be like, write for the big time, write for the studios. And looking back, and you follow their advice. And of course we all want to have giant 1,000, 2,000 screen movies and make all the big money. The reality was, I kind of didn't realize it till later, my own fault. I was kind of being steered in the wrong direction. I'm proudly a B movie guy. I like elevated B movies, but to me, I like the horror space. I like the sci-fi space. I love the independence. I work a lot in independent film. It's my people. It's my favorite movies. And that's not to say that there's not terrific studio films made out there, but that creativity that comes in an independent film, and also kind of independent books too, that was always my vibe. So in a small way, I was kind of being steered towards, well, try and write this. But at the time, I have the agent that didn't want to send this out. I wrote the script. He didn't want to send it out. Probably smartly, I don't know. So I was.
What was the feedback?
Well, the feedback was exactly what I heard from editors when I went out with the book, and from and people that read my stuff. Well, I can't really pin it down. I understand that now, especially big publishing. Big publishing, but also movies. Marketing is huge. Marketing is just gigantic in everything. We live in a marketing age. It's all about selling things. So they like to have, in general, unless you're very established and you have a name and can do these things, in general, they want to say, this is a horror movie. This is a thriller.
Sure.
This is science fiction. I get it. I understand. So when you do cross-genre things, it's a lot harder.
Does it neatly fit in a box?
It doesn't fit in a box. And that's not only just from the marketing standpoint, if you're lucky enough to get it bought, made, or sold, but it's also just the reader. They're like, oh, this is going to be a horror book. And they come in, or a horror script. They think there's a trope and it's going to follow. Now, weirdly, some of the absolute best projects ever, best movies, best books, completely break the mold. And it's a strange thing. I get it. And
it's like a catch-22.
It's a catch-22. And
yeah.
you kind of have to make your own path and stick to it. And again, some of the greatest filmmakers, some of the greatest writers have managed to weave those things in and get it. But there's also how many never made it.
Sure.
Too.
So they give you that kind of feedback. It goes back in the drawer for a number of years.
Yeah. What it helped me do was solidify the story. Something that the screenwriting training has given me, if people know this or not, screenplays follow, in general, the 3-act structure. Mm-hmm. It's the opening scene. There's a million screenwriting books on this, and we've internalized. You've watched movies. You know what it is, which is also kind of a problem sometimes. Is that you have the intro, you introduce the characters, and then there's the mid-act, and then this, and you build to the big third act and the big action scene, whatever it is. And there's certain beats, people have charted it out, and yada yada yada. And there are variations of that, but in general, that's the Hollywood structure. The good part of that is it makes for some great movies. It's palatable. You know, popcorn tastes the same across the world, and the movie tastes the same across the world. But what it helped me with as a novelist, helped me grow from short stories into the longer form, was it teaches you to follow the story. You have to be economical. They say 120 pages, but these days, if you're over 100, it's out, and you can't have big dense blocks of text. You got to be very economical with what you do. You got to tell your story within this framework. So it taught me to tell the story quicker and better, and get to the point is what it comes down to. So I wrote that as a screenplay. The agent didn't really want to send it out. Agent and a manager just didn't kind of really vibe with it. I get it. It wasn't their cup of tea, and they didn't think people were going to get it. But I do remember at one point I had said that to, for a while I was running Raw Nerve, Eli Roth, Scott Spiegel, and Boaz Yakin's horror company. And I was the head of production and development there. And I was talking to Eli about it one time and said my agent wouldn't send it out. And he says some very smart things. He goes, "It's his job to sell it, not smell it. Why won't he send it out?" He was totally right. But I get both sides. The agent didn't think, but
sure.
You get to that point, especially in Hollywood, you like, can you let them say no? Because when you have your reps preemptively saying no on something that you really believe in, it kind of hurts. And all credit to my literary agent. When she signed me with the novel a few years ago, she's like, I sent it out to everybody. And she said, "Are you sure you don't want to self-publish?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can always self-publish. I want to take a shot. I want people to read it and I want people to see. They may not like it, and she sent it to everybody. It was amazing. And it was great to have that kind of representation let them decide.
Take your shot.
Don't say no. So yeah, but I did have some great meetings over the years. At one point, my friend Ron Zwang, who kind of part of the Michigan Mafia, came out of the whole Raimi group and all that. He loved the script. He's a great writer himself. He's got short stories in my anthologies that are just wackadoodle brilliant. I can't talk enough about what a smart, amazing writer he is. But he sent it out to some people. I remember we had one 4 or 5 hour meeting with a big executive, and they were like, "This is the best thing I've ever read. This is amazing. This is brilliant." Yeah. I'm like, "Well, I don't know if we can sell this." It's frustrating. So all of that, part of that was all leading. It was frustration. You do get creatively frustrated in any medium, especially in Hollywood sometimes. Like I said earlier, and you keep getting rejections, either from a short story from a magazine, or you get it from your agent, or you get it from studios. That's part of the game. It just is. No one has a 100% hit rate. Maybe Stephen King, of course, but
not in the beginning, right?
Not in the beginning. Yeah, not in the beginning. And he almost, apparently, if the story's true, he almost cut himself off with "this is no good," and trashed it.
His wife found it in the trash can. If that's the legend, right?
Wow. Holy crap. We almost missed out on something terrific there.
Right.
So I went back and all this, a little creatively frustrated, and was having some success, getting paid to write some things, not millions of dollars.
And
but
were these meetings and this material, even though it wasn't selling, leading to other opportunities? It was opening new doors for you?
Yeah, it definitely was. It was, if nothing else, in Hollywood, you get a writing sample.
At that time.
Yeah, at that time. It was a good writing sample, and people could see, wow. And I always got the compliment on my scripts that it's like reading a story. It's like reading a book. I'm like, because I started writing short stories.
Ooh, I love that.
Because a lot of styles, I have a hard time reading some scripts because a lot of writers just aren't writers.
And they're too technical feeling, right?
They're too technical.
Exactly. So this was an example of your background as a prose writer lending itself well to screenwriting, but also screenwriting then later informing your work as a novelist, because in screenwriting, it is all about real estate on the page and just getting to it. And so this blend, you were kind of developing that over the years, right? One feeding into the other, complementing.
They complemented each other, and then they came together. So, on the side, I was also still writing scripts, but I started, I'm going to write a novel. I'd always wanted to do books, and I started feeling more confident in my writing. I went back to short stories, and I wrote some great short stories that I started getting much, much more confident. And I think everyone kind of does it. You should write 1 page, 2 pages. Next thing you know, you're writing 50 pages, and it's daunting to go, how am I going to do 200 pages or 400 or a fantasy novel, 8,000 pages? But the confidence was there. I felt much better about it.
What time period was that where you just wrote the first 100?
Mid 2000s.
Mid 2000s.
So yeah, the short story was probably, I'm lost in the mist of time, but I'm pinning it to roughly 1987.
The short story,
long time ago. The short story, the original idea.
Yeah, but I love that because writers have ideas that come and go, and then there are the ideas that never leave. And so I just want to emphasize that time. And so that's why I asked you, like, okay, I run. So I'm just a quick detour. What made you not fall out of love with this idea? Because to have it stick with you that long, what about it just wouldn't let you go across different mediums, a short story, a screenplay? What about it stuck with you?
That's hard to say. I've thought about it, but never really thought about it. I think it's the character. It's bits of me. No, I can't dunk a basketball. No, I'm not whatever, fighting monsters, but there's bits of me in the story. There's bits of my mom in the story. There's bits of my dad. There's people that I know, people I worked with, locations. And it just resonated with me. It's a piece of my life, and it has eras of me. And as the character grows, characters. There's multiple characters as we see their ascension. Kind of follows me a little bit. Again, every writer does that. Not bragging about it, but we all, we're all dumb when we're young, and we make mistakes, and we're smart. Failure is not a bad word. You fall on your face, you get up, you learn to walk.
Yeah.
So it's about that, but it's also the time and place. I've been in Hollywood most of my adult life, and over half of my life. I call LA my home because I moved around so much. But the whole Indiana, the whole Midwest, the heart of it is in there and in me. And I remember saying before I came to Hollywood to somebody, it's not going to change me. Of course it changed me, but I'm still the guy from the Midwest.
Still a part of you that never changes.
Yeah, the part of you that never changes. And that's in that's in there, that's in the character. But also, I'm not trying to pump myself up or anything, but others have said this to me that, like, you just got in the car and went. And I never really thought about that. I always kind of had that, like, let's go do something. I've always been like, get in the car and go to Hollywood. Like, back when I got in, there wasn't a film school on every corner, and it was a much more closed industry and smaller industry. I'm going to go make movies, pack up the car. I'm going to go. I'm moving to Hollywood. Now, actors did that, of course. People have done that, time immemorial, crew members. But from my world, my family, my friends, people don't do that. So I eventually got back to finishing the novel. And this is the interesting part. This is a good writing lesson. I ended it on that line that I said, the first line I had back in the 80s, who's going to feed the cat? That was the end of the story. It was a harsh ending. It was a brutal ending. That's how the screenplay ended. That's how the novella ended. That's how the first drafts of the novel ended. And there was in movie terms, a whole third act that I vaguely knew what was going to happen, but I never wanted to write it. And some people said, and the Hollywood people who read it, like, oh, you're saving that for the sequel. I'm like, no, I'm not, actually. I like where it ends. And again, it was a brutal ending, but it makes sense. It's still in the book, so there's still there's a moment and a pause. But when I got my agent, she was going to send it out to the big studios and said there's a page count, or no, excuse me, not studios, to the big publishers. There's a page count, and I was at relatively short, like 72,000 words or something. It said no, it's got to be 80 to 90,000 for horror. That's just how they work. They want this many pages and everything. And she said, I don't care where you put it. I don't care what you do. She loved it, had very few notes on it. I was surprised. And she said, I don't care where you put it, in the middle or the beginning, because there's some untold stories that I purposely didn't put on the page, or add to the ending, whatever you want to do. But if it's not 80,000 pages, I can't send it out. And I'm like, I had been living with this ending forever. I like the ending, but so that was the big thing that came together. I realized she'll send it out if I add more to it, but also life. When I still like movies with hard endings. There's some brutal things. I like books that end harsh, but you get to a point in life where you've lived, you've loved, you've lost. I guess I'm softer than I was. And I don't know if somebody wants to damn me on that or not. I mean, I've always been a nice guy and a softie, and I'm not afraid to cry, but it's that thing where I don't want to be mean to my characters. Life's been kicking me around. Life's kicking other friends around. Things are happening, and I'm the king of this sandbox. And I realized that I'm like, I don't want to be mean to them anymore. I'm gonna rework this ending. I'm gonna write that ending, and part of that was too that the front end, it looks easy now, but it's an intricate series of flashbacks from the main character. You start in the present, then you go back, and I use the structure that no one's even commented on, but I'm very proud of. My chapters are now and then. I don't give them numbers or anything or names. I just now and then. So I backstory this story. So, and there's various characters where you meet them now, and then you hear their backstory, and it eventually comes together as the end comes together. It all winds up mostly in the present as the story rockets towards this ending. But I really couldn't break the structure at the beginning. So that couldn't break the structure, had to add pages, kind of knew what the ending, and I'm like, I'm just going to write the ending. And all credit to Cherry Weiner, my literary agent, that making me wake up, pay attention, write some of the best writing I've ever done. I not only created the most hilariously horrifying torture scene I think ever written. I defy anybody to come up with a better one. I still cringe and laugh when I read it. But it also tied together all of the themes that I had in the book. I'm subconsciously writing them, consciously writing them, and they're all there of teamwork and love and selflessness, and obsession and doing what you have to do or realizing when you shouldn't do it. All of those themes came together in this end. And there's a world where, yeah, it's a softer ending than it was before, but I'm very, very proud of it. And it really, again, drives home everything that I was trying to say. And when I finished that, I was like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Just the act of doing that, putting more pages and words in, made the entire story 100 times better, and it reverberates backwards.
Yeah.
So when you get to the end, I'm really proud. One of the Amazon reviews says that it's like you're feeling all this stuff and the genres are mixing around and you're getting all these pieces of story. And then at the ending, it all reverberates, it all comes together and you realize, wow, what was happening. And I'm very, very proud of that.
That's incredible. And I just, how long that you've had this story and how you've changed over the course of your life, and how maybe, is it safe to say you were incapable of writing this ending before the time that you wrote it? You had to grow into the kind of person that would recognize what this story needs. And it was just this perfect, moment with the literary agents, like, needs more. And you're going, dang it, I think I know where it has to go.
Yeah, it literally, I grew into it. Yeah, I mean, could I have written this ending before? Absolutely, 100%. Would it have had the same emotional resonance and depth and things that I put into it?
It's incredible.
It would have been there, and maybe I'm overstating it. Maybe it's not as emotionally resonant as I think it is, but I do think it is.
You're being too modest.
Yeah, I really do think it is. And again, the reviews, it's it's the slow burn, the onion peeling. But when you finally get there, and the ending goes in directions you're not expecting either. It comes off, again, back to mixing genres and uprooting that kind of 3-act structure. You think it's going one direction, and I don't make a complete U-turn, but it all staying within the story and characters and everything that's been established. I go into a different direction that you don't see coming. Yeah. And again, it resonates. And it still ends. It still ends on a traditional horror moment, and I still get all the goodies are in there and all the fun things. But
so now the moment where your literary agent, you add the ending, literary agent sends it out to all the major publishers. What happens?
You wait and wait and wait and wait. But I started getting rejections. And again, to the agent's credit, I'm like, let's take the shot at the top. You can always fall back. Why not? Let's just see what happens.
Yep.
And some really good rejections. One editor earlier on had written like 2 or 3 pages of, look, I can't buy this, but here's why, but here's what I like. And I had shown that around to people that are in publishing, and they went, she's very respected. She wrote a 3-page, like, she likes this book.
Yeah. Well, not all rejections
that was
are
a
equal.
huge confidence. That was a big confidence
Absolutely.
boost. Even if that particular editor didn't buy it, I'm reading it like, oh wow, you like this. So,
and that wouldn't have happened if you didn't take that shot. But like,
exactly.
I like to say, not all rejections or not all no's are equal. They could still lead to things there's still some movement.
Yeah. Or when you say that, a little digression, but some advice that I give to people, screenwriters mostly, beginning screenwriters, but anyone, if you send your work out and people have different ideas, listen to notes. You send it out for notes, listen to them. But if various people have different things, there's ways, I would have done it this way, I would have done it that way, that's fine. You can ignore some, listen to some, see, revise yourself, look at it. If 2 or 3 or more people have the same problem, you got a problem, you need to fix it. So, you'll hear things on different parts of the story, but if people are zeroing in on one thing, wake up, you need to fix it.
Take another look at it. Yeah.
But yes, it does. You take the feedback, and it bruises your ego. There's no way around it. Because I think writing, and this doesn't, trying not to take away from artists and actors and any musicians, anyone creative, But writing, you're alone. The cats, the dogs, the wife, the kids, the friends, whatever, but you're alone on this pedestal. Like I said, you're everything, and you're putting bits of you in it. And you can't help but feel like when they reject your literary child, they're rejecting you. And again, the smart people listen, pay attention, wake up, listen to your friends, listen to, pick. I have some friends that are brutal. There's two in particular. One's a screenwriter and one's a novelist. They're harsh. Like they don't candy coat it. We're good friends. And when I send something to them to read, like I'm waiting for it. And when I get back that they actually love it, you're like, are you sure that you're not? And they're like, I'm like, just like,
you're like bracing.
I'm like, oh no, because they will take you apart. And I love that. You need friends that way. And, another thing to mention too, I kind of brushed on it earlier. I hear a lot of beginning novelists and story writers though. I don't need an editor. I don't need an editor. I don't need an editor. Yeah, you do. I heard Tim Powers, one of my favorite writers of all time. Somebody was saying that at something he was talking at, and I chat with him at book shows every now and then. We're not friends or anything, but he's just a huge influence on me, and it's nice just to be able to say hi, Tim. But some other writer was saying that, and Tim Powers, if you don't know him, he's probably had X amount of books in the bestseller list over decades, and he kind of looks over and goes, I'm nothing without my editor. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, wake up. You do need an editor. You need the agent. You need someone.
If Tiger Woods needs a coach, you need an editor.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't matter where you're at.
Don't kid yourself and be ready to take that.
But
so we sent that out. We sent it out. The first round was rejected, and Cherry, my agent, she shared some of the passes, and they were literally one I remember that said, it mixes genres. It's like we can't really categorize. Exactly what she said was probably going to happen, but can't categorize it. And they said it's kind of like the Goonies, that it kind of. And I went, yes, thank you. You're comparing me to one of the greatest films of all time, like. But again, getting it, because they need that, in general, need that more narrow focus to be able to promote something. And my agent said to me, do you want to, what do you want to do? Do you want to just go and self-publish it now? It's totally fine. We tried it. And I said, you know what? Let's go to the mids. Let's find the mid-level. I go to Barnes & Noble. I'm online, and I find all of these other smaller publishers. And she's like, okay, let's try it. And again, credit to her for sending it out again to the mid-level ones. It got to the point where, yes, everybody passed. And don't begrudge that. Not their style, hard to sell, whatever.
Sure.
I will never deny that it's a strange duck, as it were. But there did become a point where, I need to do this. I should, and it was a little depressing. Again, I completely admit, crap. We all want to be Rick Castle and drive Ferraris and all these things. We all want to be Stephen King. But again, you flash back a little bit to the younger you. We're like, oh, is it really good? Is it any good? And then you obsessively reread it and you go, you know what? It's good. It's good. It's me. It's my style. It's different. It's unique. I get that not everybody wants it, but it's good. And credit, it did lounge again for a couple of years. It just kind of, again, life got in the way. And I was working on my second novel that I'm editing now and doing another screenplay and working like crazy. This is post-pandemic when Hollywood came back.
Yes.
I'm like, now came back with a vengeance. And for 2 or 3 years, it was insane, making up for the gap of production for 6 or 8 months, whatever, when the world shut down. So I kind of put it by the wayside. And a really close friend who had read the script and read the draft, and a good friend who's becoming a rising writer-director, he's just like, when are you going to put the damn book out? And again, credit Rich Tanny, thank you, kicking me in the ass. I say it in the foreword, like, thanks, Rich. You just like, it wasn't that I wasn't doing it. It was just kind of entropy.
Yeah.
And so then I started assembling the files. And I started looking for my wonderful cover designer, Zelda Devon, who's amazing, and it originally wasn't the style that I thought, but
yes.
Yeah, and it turns out I loved her style, but it wasn't what I was thinking, but I had this rough idea of what I wanted, and then the more we talked, she was a friend of a friend, actually, of Drew Pierce, who's a writer-director himself, and he did an artist. He did the covers of Hell Comes to Hollywood 1 and 2, and I called him and said, I know it's not your style and you're past this, but is there someone that an artist out there? Because I look on DeviantArt, there was one person that I liked, and I loved his art, but he wasn't available. And again, I'm very particular about things. And Drew said, I've worked with Zelda Devon, give her a call. So I looked at her website, and I always like to tell the story that it said, I'm very big into fonts. People don't realize that how the lettering on a book or a poster is hyper important.
It matters.
It matters.
Yeah.
So part of it, I liked her art, even though it wasn't the exact style. It was better than what I was thinking for this. But I got to the page where I believe she said she walks around the neighborhood and finds sticks, and then picks a stick for a project, and then uses ink and hand letters things. And I immediately, the light bulb went off, and I said, "You're my artist." So we started talking, and we both turned out to be giant Bernie Wrightson fans. Which, if you know Bernie Wrightson, he's
No.
passed on, but one of the greatest illustrators ever. Comic book artist does not cover him at all. He's very famous for doing the illustrations for Frankenstein. There's the great hardcover book. And then also,
Okay.
I still have a copy of the script decades ago when Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein went around Hollywood. Bernie Wrightson's sketches are in the script. You don't do that in Hollywood. But it was,
Whoa.
Kenneth Branagh and all that.
Yes.
I made it as an intern or whatever, assistant. It's still in my drawer
That's so
somewhere.
cool.
And then later that giant hardcover book came out, and I have, a couple of Bernie Wrightson's prints above my desk. So we found out we were huge fans because I made the joke. I said, "Well, no offense, but if he was alive and I'd have to buy a house to mortgage it to hire him to do the cover." And she went, "Oh, you're a Bernie fan too?" And then we both got excited and dug in. So, an homage to an art style a little different than her regular style, my ideas, and it was really fun to come up with the cover. And again, it's comic booky, but not,
Right.
it's not horror. It gives the fun. And I
Yes.
love the reaction. The reaction I wanted that most people give is like, why is there a guy with a machete and a basketball by a like, what's going on here? That's the reaction I wanted from the beginning. And
Exactly.
it's an amalgamation of scenes in the book.
Yeah.
But and the car is important. If you read it, you'll understand what the car is all about. And Zelda managed to stick the car in. So anyway, I'm doing all that, and I've had a previous version edited. I'd had two different editors working with me on it, and at this point, I went into my own editing mode, and because again, all my editing experience, my writing experience, and I went into hardcore 6 or 8 weeks. I've always marveled at people, and you hear the stories of somebody just they sat down and worked 10 hours a day. And I'm like, how could they do that? I did it. Literally every day I would get up and I'd just sit there and look at it, and I would go line by line. Now, there's still mistakes and still things I would change. Nothing is ever perfect. But I like to say this. When I finished that and had the draft mostly ready to go off to my formatter, I feel like a real writer. Like I'd finally done the work. I'd done it before. I've done all this before, but just that intensive labor of putting it in, everything from the cover to the design to the words. And even though I've lived with some of these words for over decades, like I really feel like I've done it. I feel like I've earned the title now. And
Yes.
and I laugh at myself, and maybe it does suck. I don't know. I don't care. It's me. It's
Well,
mine.
it does not.
I don't think it does, but somebody does. Good for them. It's
Yeah.
not everybody's taste, but like I feel like I finally did it. And again, hopefully it's a one-hit wonder at the very least, but it felt good to finish it. And that's also the message to every writer out there, every artist, and we all know it. When you get all the rejections that come in and the doubts and everything, and maybe you're not good, maybe you are, maybe you're a good storyteller and a bad writer, or vice versa, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You did it. It's you. It's yours. You finished it.
Yeah.
And we want it to sell. We want to make $1 million. It doesn't matter. It's yours. It's on the shelf. It's in your drawer. It's you. And do that. Do the old saying, art for art's sake. It means something. Even if it's a doodle, whatever you do, it's yours and it's you. And hold on to that. Hope for that other people find it, like it, and you get the Ferrari and the mansion every day. But that's not why you do it. I think if you come out of the gate wanting to do it that way, people are going to tell. You're going to know.
No. And I mean, it's just like starting a podcast. It's, it's not about the outcome. It's about the act of doing it and about connecting with people and about, it's the pursuit, right?
It is. And it's that life journey.
Yeah.
That, like I said, all of these things come together. I'm lucky enough in my career that I've been able to, I always say this, I've gone places and done things and met people that I never would have done. And in the writing, joining the Horror Writers Association for all the good they do, I've got to meet people that I grew up writing. I mean, come on, I've had a Coke with Tim Powers at the paperback show, and he laughs like, dude, you have no idea how much you influenced me, and he's so funny. I still remember he signed a book to me one time. We was buying it, and it said something about, well, when are we going to make any money at this or something, which is hilarious.
Yes.
But yeah, just people like that. And one of my anthologies, the 18 Wheels of Horror, my most successful anthology, a friend knew Ray Garton. Now, Ray has passed on, and I didn't know him that well, but my friend knew him better. But I grew up reading his books in the 80s, and he was one of my favorite writers. And they call Ray, and I end up talking to him and having these wonderful conversations. And I got Ray Garton wrote an original story for my anthology. And again, the kid in Indiana, you jumping up on the couch going, yes, I won. That's like winning the World Series or the NBA Finals or whatever. And
Yes.
I still routinely go back and I high-five that 14-year-old kid sitting in his bedroom in Indiana with movie posters and books and everything and dreaming of all that. And do I have success like, the big-time success? No. Am I ever going to get it? Probably not. That doesn't matter. I'm successful in a way that I never thought that I could be and in ways that I never imagined that I could be. And again, like you said, the personal connection. And that goes back into the writing, the story. It becomes about people and places and events. And I just want to hope that one person reads that. And there's themes in the book we didn't touch on yet, but not on camera, as it were, on the page, but they're alluded to heavily of abuse and bullying. And I was bullied a lot when I was a kid. And so a lot of that, dealing with that and the resolution of that and how the characters come together to help each other with their personal traumas and support each other and learn and grow and how to deal with that. It's a dumb horror book, but it's also about that.
Yeah.
And if one person reads that and feels that, empowered or sees a way to deal with it or just simply realizes I'm not alone out there, I've won. I've really won at that point, because that's didn't intend to do that when I wrote it, but that's kind of like the side process of what's going on underneath. And it's important that people realize that you're not alone out there. Everyone has trauma. Everyone's got weird families and bad things happen. But stand up for yourself. Someone will find you. You're not alone.
It also speaks to the power of persistence. As writers, anyone in the creative industry knows they're going to hear no all the time throughout their career. And sometimes it feels like, and I say this before, it's like we're always breaking in just at new levels. But one thing about you and just tracking the life of this idea into now a book that you could hold in your hands, which is amazing. You never stopped writing. And you found success in screenwriting. You went to anthologies. You were always improving, always looking to improve your own craft. And I think that you never stopped writing. You might have shelved this particular idea for a certain number of years at times, but you never stopped writing.
Yeah, and never stopped growing as a writer. And I think that's the important thing. And I think in life too, like do a different job. Don't do this. I always see that people have asked me like the Hollywood career. Like at one point, IMDb years ago didn't believe that all of the credits were me, because it's production, producer, writer, transportation, all these things. And they split me up, and I had to argue with them. Like, no, it's literally all me. There's people that do that. And it's a little bit split personality. And my reason when people ask me that, I'm like, well, I had to pay the rent. Somebody offers you a job, like I'll figure that out. And to have that, but like you said, with the writing is I liked screenplays. That didn't mean, and I was good at it. That didn't mean I stopped writing short stories. And then I was chipping away at this and learning things from each one that goes back and forth.
Yes.
And I think that cross discipline of it being able to bounce back and forth, it's been very valuable to me. And I feel much more confident when I write something now. And some stories are for some mediums. Like
right.
This could be a great book, that could be a great movie or whatever.
Sure.
And it's also your personality too. Like, do I want to write something that, the problem with Hollywood is you write it, it goes out, doesn't get bought, it disappears. A book, it can stay on the shelf forever. A short story can live forever. Yeah. So there's a little bit of that goes into my creative thinking these days. Like, well, maybe I'll do that as a book, but I'm always thinking, why don't I do it as both? Why not?
Yes.
What the heck? And it does help you go back and forth, because the screenplay helps you fine tune the book, and the book helps you fine tune the screenplay.
This is something I ask every guest. It's called the rule I break. Every industry has rules. Some are there for a reason, and some are just begging to be broken. So what's a rule in your field that you don't follow or believe in?
It's the rule that I tell everyone, that other writers tell everyone, is write every day. Treat it like it's a job. And I'm the worst. I'm terrible. I don't know what the right word for it is. I call it a streak writer, whatever. And yes, the advice is yes, every day. Give yourself a page count. 100 words. 100 words a day, that's 500-700. You'll do a book or a script in less than a year. If you can do 1,000, it elevates. That is the rule. I just can't, either through life, but also my mentality. I have ideas, they bubble in my head. One of my favorite short stories, which is my most rejected short story of all time that I'm very proud of, I'm almost to the 1,000 point on that one. I had the idea and it bubbled in my head for about 15 years. And one day I just got up and went, oh yeah. And I just sat and I wrote it. And I did some rewriting, but it's mostly my first draft. And it's fun. It's one of the favorite things I've ever written. And obviously it must be terrible because everyone keeps rejecting it. But it's the ultimate cross-genre wackadoodle thing. But yeah, treat it like it's a job.
Before we go, I like to do a rapid fire round. 5 questions. First thing that comes to mind. What was the last book you read?
Brimstone and Blades.
What's that?
It is a YA novel by a friend of mine, Maria Alexander. Love her writing, multiple Bram Stoker winner, wonderful person. And it kind of YA, but it's a historical swords, sorcery, not sword and sorcery, but it's a demon magic thing. And the beauty of people like that is I can read a YA book and love it because she's a great writer.
What's a movie you love rewatching?
I can rewatch Gremlins over and over and over.
Great pick. If it wasn't this, what's another career field you could see yourself in?
Retired billionaire.
Retired billionaire. Worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Why don't you cut your hair?
What was the context?
Everyone. When are you going to cut your hair and get a real job? And so luckily it's not fallen out. That's one thing that I've got. I've made it this far, but it's like, I don't know why I did it. Started growing it out long when I was 12 in the Midwest, but back before it was cool. And I used to get dirty looks from old conservative people and everything. I remember at one point, a great moment in my life, a old lady in downtown Seymour, Indiana, just literally stopped me on the sidewalk and said, "What's with your long hair?" And I don't know where it came from, but I said, "Ma'am, it was good enough for Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. I think it's good enough for me." And she almost had a stroke.
That's a great comeback. And flip it, and you touched on this a little bit. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Be yourself. You hear that in the after-school specials. You hear it, bumper stickers, everything, not just your writing, but just be yourself. Be true to yourself. Everyone has value. Doesn't matter what your job is. Doesn't matter what you come from. Doesn't matter how much education you have, what sex you are, what color you are. Everyone has value. And so be yourself. Find what's the best in you and put that out there for other people to find.
I love that. I think that's beautiful. Eric, this was such a pleasure talking to you and meeting you. Like I said, I'm just loving this book so far. Whatever Happened to Uncle Ed, this genre mashup, which I find so intriguing, was the very thing that was working, quote unquote, against it for so many years. But the fact that you stuck with it, you have something you can hold in your hands. You had to get to a certain point in your life, it seems, to write the ending it needed. And I find that so fascinating. And I'm just grateful to have spent this time with you. So once again, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. And again, the tagline, I say it, I think in the wrap up of the book and everything, but it's a life thing. Better late than never.
Love it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, before you go, thank you for listening. If something in this episode moved you or even made you pause for a second, please consider following the show, leaving a review, and signing up for the weekly newsletter at storyseriespodcast.com. That's where I share my personal takeaways from each episode, what stuck with me and why, one story at a time. See you in the next one.